Anita Sarkeesian just closed Feminist Frequency and, with it, ended one of the biggest internet grifts. You will likely remember Gamergate if you have been online long enough. If you are unfamiliar with this term, you can consider yourself lucky. Although I did not follow the entire saga closely back in the day, I feel the effects of those debates in modern gaming. The conversation surrounding Gamergate has not slowed down at all. Instead, it is alive and well in many entertainment spaces. We refer to it by different names. Whether we call it updating for a modern audience, complying with global standards, or ESG policy, it is all the same. Gamergate started when Anita Sarkeesian began to gain traction for her commentary on how women are portrayed in video games. Her Tropes vs. Women in Video Games series is likely what she is the most well known for. Although since then, she has gone on a comprehensive world tour, talking about how sexist video games are. The sexualization of video game characters is not a new debate at all. Gamergate highlighted many of these talking points and catapulted them into the mainstream. This is one of the worst things that could have happened within the space. Since then, online media has labeled any woman with a skirt sexist. Games like Street Fighter, Tomb Raider, and Mortal Kombat has all been on the receiving end of these criticisms. I will agree that certain types of sexism do exist in the space. However, those issues exist in the real world at companies like Blizzard and Ubisoft. Blizzard went through a massive lawsuit where they were exposed for horrible workplace practices toward women. Instead of defending these real women, everyone is focused on anime girls. I will be shocked if Anita Sarkeesian was ever a true gamer. Although it is not my place to point out who is a true gamer, there is always a comment trend amongst the critics. Those who yell the loudest about sexism in video games rarely play them. You can criticize something without being a fan or a dedicated participant. However, it is essential to understand where some of the criticism is coming from. I criticize specific types of music without being a fan or a dedicated listener, and thus, you can voice your opinion on games without playing them. However, I do not go on world tours trying to change everything I do not like about specific genres of music. I ignore what I do not like and leave. Anita decided to build an entire career criticizing women's clothing in video games. She successfully got consulting jobs at many studios, including Naughty Dog. However, after 15 years of commentary on video game girls' looks, she is finally done and moving on. It was announced this week that Feminist Frequency is shutting down. It is worth pointing out that this does not mean the end of the road for Anita. She is likely already hard at work with her next project. Sadly, people like this tend to fail upwards. There is also no indication why Anita Sarkeesian shut Feminist Frequency down. You have to draw the obvious conclusion that it was due to viewership. Typically, websites that only exist to rage bait last only a short time. There are only so many ways to call a game sexist before people get tired and move on. Now that Anita Sarkeesian has shut down her blog, we must ask the obvious question. Did Anita Sarkeesian succeed in her quest to change video games? If you ask her, she will likely say no. If she says yes, there will be nothing left to fight, and she will stop making money. However, if you ask gamers, their answers will differ. Many are hesitant to say that she impacted gaming because acknowledging this means you must admit that she has influence. Although I do not believe that she positively impacted gaming, she certainly left her footprint. The entire debate started with Anita pointing toward how women were portrayed in video games. Although she was not the only voice to point this out, she was among the loudest. She was also one of the only ones who made a career out of it. Many things that she criticized about gaming back then are now being changed. The conversation has shifted drastically, and gaming studios are pushing more than ever to be progressive. To be clear, I do not believe that Anita Sarkeesian had any influence over this. This shift would have happened without her. However, it cannot be denied that her previous criticisms are now addressed with global standards and updated for modern audiences. While all of this hurts the games we play today, it did have an impact. Every day there is a new game announcing they will be removing content that is deemed as offensive. This usually involves some women's character and what they are wearing. It is hard to gear these stories and not think back to Gamergate. As stated, I do not believe that Anita directly succeeded with Gamergate. Instead, it was a combination of people who finally shifted the direction of video games. There are hundreds and thousands of Anitas out there. Each of them crawls their way into video games. We often ask ourselves how gaming could have taken such a turn for the worst. The answer is easier than you might think. We no longer have gamers making video games. It used to be a small team of a few hundred passionate people who make titles. Now it is thousands of people, most of whom are not gamers. You have Hollywood scriptwriters and actors entering the space and making games. These people understand nothing about the medium and are involved in the development process. Because gaming is a prominent genre worth hundreds of billions, everyone wants a slice. Sadly, this often attracts the worst type of people. These people are out of touch and do not know what the audience wants. This is due to them not understanding the fans they are creating games for. Other times they despise gamers, yet they still try to cash in. This is how people like Anita Sarkeesian get work. Several studios have hired her to consult on gaming. Anita consults on a medium that she despises. She hates the space, she hates the fans, and she hates the product. Yet, she is hired to consult. Do you now understand why certain games feel off? People like this are everywhere, and they influence many gaming studios. They write video games, direct video games, and sometimes even run studios. Sadly, there is no real answer to stop things like this. You can stop the individual, but it is hard to stop the movement. People like this usually stay for a short time as their goal is to make money. They say outrageous things, get backlash, use that as leverage, and take the money off suckers. As soon as they have it, they leave. Due to this, it is hard to root out these bad actors. You can get rid of them by not engaging, which might get rid of some, but there is always another waiting for their opportunity.